What's up, Ravens fans? It's time to hear from you guys in our Ravens Mailbag segment. Lots of good questions right now as it's the offseason, so let's go ahead and jump right into them. The first question today comes from Jade Dirk 29, and Jay wants to know, would the Ravens trade for a wide receiver?
We're going to talk about every different way to acquire a wide receiver.
Draft, free agency, every other possibility.
How can we get a wide receiver?
Create in a laboratory, every possibility.
You can go to Madden for that one.
Yeah.
Yes, I think the Ravens could trade for a wide receiver, but I think it depends on what happens in those other avenues beforehand. If the Ravens strike out in free agency and can't get a bona fide #1 legit wide receiver, then they'll turn to the draft. If they can't get that guy in the draft, let's say it's a Calvin Ridley, if he goes before the Ravens are on the clock at number 16, then yes, I think the Ravens are going to sit there and say, what's our last remaining option? And they could trade somebody. Now, whether that's draft picks down the future, maybe the Ravens have an excess at a certain position on the defense where they could trade somebody, probably not for a #1 wide receiver, but maybe that could be part of a package. Either way you look at it, I think the Ravens will be aggressive in getting a top flight wide receiver, no matter how it comes. What concerns me is Calvin Ridley could be gone.
Yeah.
Are you going to rely on a second-round pick to be your top guy? I don't know. You know?
The other thing, too, is Ozzie Newsome has shown a history of being willing to trade for guys. I mean, go through, he traded for Eugene Monroe. He traded for Jeremy Zuttah.
Anquan Bolden.
He traded for Anquan Bolden. I mean, he's made those kinds of moves, so I don't think that is outside the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I agree.
Our next question comes from Magnus, and the question deals with Ozzie Newsome. The question is there any chance that Ozzie will go crazy and wild in his last offseason as a general manager, restructuring, extending, and spending like there is no tomorrow? Well, I don't think that's going to be the case. I mean, even though it's Ozzie's going into his final season as a general manager, he's still going to be here beyond 2018, and then Eric DeCosta is going to take over that general manager role. But what I do think is that the Ravens will be creative and aggressive in trying to clear up salary cap space. If they want to go out there and get offensive playmakers, a bona fide #1 receiver, a tight end, a running back, those kinds of players, well, guess what? They don't necessarily come cheap, and you can try to do that in the draft, and I think that they will. But Steve Bisciotti even said during his press conference last week, I'm not all that worried about the salary cap space. You can make money. You can restructure contracts. So I think that will happen, but I don't think it's because Ozzie's in the final year of his contract. I wouldn't connect the two.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Our last question comes from @DCats, and the question is, will attention be paid to our offensive line? Serious attention.
Right, well, I thought we were paying attention to the wide receivers. Now offensive line.
Exactly. Now it's the newest crop of issues here. So let's not forget that the Ravens already used their 6th overall draft pick 2 years ago on left tackle Ronnie Stanley. So they've paid attention to the offensive line. But really, when it comes down to it here, I think it depends on what happens in free agency. Does Ryan Jensen leave? Does James Hurst leave? You know, if those two guys leave, then yeah, you have more question marks there. Now, the Ravens do have pretty good depth on the offensive line. Let's not forget, Alex Lewis is going to be back next year from the shoulder injury. Nico Saragusa, who tore up his knee, he's going to be back. Jermaine Illuminor was a rookie last year. So you have pretty good depth. Matt Skura, who filled in for Marshall Yanda, maybe he moves to center. You have good depth there. But I do think that if some guys leave, you could address the position, particularly center or guard, really, in the first few rounds. Probably not first round,
right? But
first few rounds, maybe even a right tackle. I mean, you look at the mock drafts right now, and you look at it, it's maybe wide receiver isn't going to be there. Maybe that's not the play. There are a lot of tackles in the first round, very good offensive tackles, and maybe you can upgrade the offense in the trenches by picking a first-round tackle. So you never know.
You never know. All right, well, we love to hear from you guys every single week, so send in those questions on social media using the hashtag RavensMailbag. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.